All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. It is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year to everybody. And we know Kwanzaa just ended. Some of you all saw my Kwanzaa presentation I did at King Solomon Baptist Church on Wednesday, December 27th, 2023, and we broadcasted here as well. And because I was short on time, there was some information that I did not get a chance to get to, okay? So I wanted to take this time, take a few minutes to address some of that information. Now, the Kwanzaa presentation that I did was called Kwanzaa, Kujichagulia, Self-Determination to Repair the Damage from a Legacy of Slavery and Racism. And one of the things, I talked about three main topics, but one of the topics that I talked about dealt with the California Reparations Task Force, their final report that they released June 29th, 2023, okay? And, you know, we've talked a lot about the California Reparations Task Force here on the African History Network show. So one of the articles that I referenced was from CNN.com. This article right here, California Reparations Task Force releases final set of recommendations. So this article came out June 29th, Thursday, June 29th, 2023. And they released their final report. And their final report is over 1,000 pages. It's about 1,008 pages. A task force examining reparations for Black residents in California released its final report Thursday, June 29th, with more than 115 recommendations for how the state should compensate those harmed by slavery and historical atrocities. Recommendations in the landmark report, comprised of more than 1,000 pages, include a formal apology on behalf of California to residents of people enslaved in the United States and recommendations for reforms linked to healthcare, housing, education, and criminal justice, among other areas. Okay, so go back and watch the presentation that I did. Now, here's some things that I wanted to get to. One of the things I talked about was a study that dealt with how white Americans believe that African Americans could be equally as successful as white Americans if we just tried harder. Okay. Now, look at this article here, Newsweek.com. This is from April 4th, 2018, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. Okay. The 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. 40% of whites think Black people just need to try harder, poll finds. All right. And you can go read this article from Newsweek. This was a YouGov poll. And they looked at and they saw that YouGov asked a number of questions on what it called racial resentment, one of which centered on whether the respondent agreed with the statement, "It's really a matter of some people not trying hard enough." It's really a matter of some people not trying hard enough. If Blacks only try harder, they could be just as well off as whites. Okay. And overall, 35% of respondents agreed. And they go on to say 40% of white respondents agreed, 19% strongly, 21% somewhat, that Black people just need to try harder to be equal, while just 18%, 5% strongly, 13% somewhat of African-American respondents said the same, according to the YouGov poll. Okay, so you can read this full article. This is what I was referencing. Now, they skip over things like the Homestead Act of 1862, that redistributed 270 million acres of land for 124 years. Most of that land went to white people. The Homestead Act of 1862. Okay. They skip over 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining, housing discrimination, etc., that have now distributed wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. And they think this is just about trying harder. Okay, read this article here from history.com, the official website of the History Channel. Homestead Act. The 1862 Homestead Act accelerated settlement of U.S. Western Territory by allowing any American, including freed slaves, to put in a claim for up to 160 free acres of land. Okay, but you had to pay a nominal fee for it. But most freed slaves got shut out of this massive land giveaway. And they gave away land for 124 years. Okay. It was repealed. The Homestead Act was repealed in 1976 and resulted in 10% of U.S. land, or 270 million acres, to be claimed and settled. Okay, so now when you look at the racial wealth gap, okay, so read this article from history.com. When we look at the racial wealth gap is 8-to-1, okay? And African Americans have a median household net worth of $24,100 compared to $188,200 for white households. If we look at the executive summary, there's a 74-page executive summary here for the California Reparations Task Force for their study that they released June 29th, 2023. And I want to look here at the executive summary. Executive summary, and you can just Google California Reparations Task Force final report. On page, what page is this here? They talk about page 15. Page 15, they deal with the racial wealth gap. Now they laid out 12 harms that America and California has inflicted upon African Americans. And then they lay out and they deal with that history, they deal with the laws and policies, and then they deal with the remedies, over 115 policies they lay out. Okay, but right here, wealth gap. These harms have compounded over generations, resulting in an enormous wealth gap that is the same today as it had been 2 years before the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. So going back to 1962. So the racial wealth gap today is as enormous as it was in 1962. In 2019, the median African American household net worth of $24,100 compared to $188,200 for white households. This wealth gap persists regardless of educational level and family structure and across all income levels. Okay, so racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of an ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. Racism is a power structure. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people, calling people racial names, racial slurs. That's bigotry. Racism is something entirely different. So what this study does, it goes through and documents this history and the laws and policies that have now distributed wealth, power, and resources into the hands of white society. and it lays out the remedies to correct these harms. Okay. All right. Now, so I'll read this here. You can just Google California Reparations Task Force final report, or you can go to let's see here. Where is that? It's at the California Attorney General's website also. oag.ca.gov, oag.ca.gov. You can go there as well. Okay, now. Okay, so we dealt with those topics, and then I want to go to the next one. Okay, I talked about how most Americans are against reparations. And there was an article from the Associated Press that dealt with this. There was an article that dealt with how some Japanese Americans were in support of African Americans getting reparations because they got some type of restitution between 1988 and 1998. Okay, this right here. Let me go to this slide. Okay, most Americans are against reparations for slavery. Only 30% of U.S. adults surveyed by the Pew Research Center in 2021 supported reparations for slavery in some way for descendants of formerly enslaved people. So 2/3 of Americans are against reparations. 2/3 of Americans are against reparations. You can read this article from Associated Press, apnews.com. Japanese Americans want redress. Fight for Black reparations. This is from February 24th, 2023. Okay. Now, what I've been saying is, and I discussed this some in my presentation when I talked about why African Americans have not received reparations yet. Because with 13.5% of the U.S. population and 2/3 of Americans are against reparations, which means the majority of the people who have to vote for these policies in the state legislatures and especially in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, majority of these people are white. We only make up about 12 or 13% of the U.S. House of Representatives, and right now about 3.5% of the U.S. Senate. And I say half because half the time Senator Tim Scott doesn't act like he's Black. He's already said he's not voting for reparations. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, he already Republican. He already said he's not voting for reparations. So what I've said previously, and I think is absolutely correct, is we need to take the term reparations off of what it is that we say that we want and push the policies that we want. And these 115 policy recommendations for the California Reparations Task Force, we need to craft policy at the federal, state, and local level, different variations of these policies to address the 12 harms that are laid out here, okay? And one of the most important things that has to happen is that you have to show how these policies also will also benefit not just African Americans, but Americans in general. Because policies that are good for African Americans are good for Americans in general, okay? When you talk about discharging student loan debt, that's not just good for African Americans, and 2/3 of the almost $2 trillion of student loan debts are held by African American women. But that's not just good for us, that's good for Americans in general. Okay, you're going to have to show how these various policies benefit other people, because most of the people who have to vote for these policies are not African American, and they have to justify these policies to their constituents back home that voted them into office in the first place. For some reason, people haven't figured this out. If you're 13.5% of the population and you just keep talking about black, 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 slavery, 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 you're going to lose. I'm telling you right now, that's not going to work. Okay. We haven't figured this. We haven't, too many of our people have not figured this out. You know, there's a concept in business school that you're taught called WIFM. What's in it for me? Okay. And when you're in negotiations trying to get what you want on your side, you have to also explain how this deal benefits other people. You have to have something in that deal that benefits other people as well, who are negotiating on the other side for their people, for their side, their business, their entity, whatever it is. So too many people haven't figured this out. Now, the 12 harms that are laid out here in the California Reparations Task Force final, in their 500-page preliminary study, and then in their final study are 1, enslavement, 2, racial terror, 3, political disenfranchisement, 4, housing segregation, 5, separate and unequal education, 6, racism in environment and infrastructure, 7, pathologizing the black family, 8, control over creative, cultural, and intellectual life. A lot of that has to do with royalties being stolen from African-American artists. There was an article from rollingstone.com that talked about this with dealing with the California Reparations Task Force. And that has a lot to do with that. It's not the only thing, but it has a lot to do with that. I'm going to see if I can pull up this article here. Right here. Let's see. California Reparations Task Force takes on historic theft of black art and culture. Okay, so this article here, I'll show you that in just a second. Let me get that up. Okay, number 8, control over creative, cultural, and intellectual life. Number 9, stolen labor and hindered opportunity. Number 10, an unjust legal system. 11, mental and physical harm and neglect. 12, the racial wealth gap. Okay, now here's this article, and I've talked about this before in the African History Network show. This article, I talked about it when it came out. California Reparations Task Force takes on the historic theft of black art and culture. This dealt with their preliminary study. Nearly 600-page interim report is, quote, the most extensive government-issued report on the African-American community, end quote, since 1968, according to the task force chair, who's attorney Camila Moore. She's referring to the Kerner Commission report in 1968. So this is Elvis Presley, the original song creators whose work Elvis Presley appropriated. The California report states were not even paid for the use of their music. Okay. The California Reparations Task Force has issued its interim report. Okay. Quote, throughout American history, the federal government historically deprived African-American artists and innovators of intellectual property rights, copyright protections, and patent protections, resulting in intellectual and cultural theft. Intellectual and cultural theft and exploitation, states the report, which according to Task Force Chair Camila Moore is, quote, the most extensive government issued report on the African-American community since the Kerner Commission in 1968, end quote. The report includes a series of preliminary recommendations for California encouraging the state to create an Office of Freedom and Cultural Affairs to compensate individuals who have been deprived of rightful profits for their creative work and to prevent further discrimination in arts and entertainment industries through a series of policies and legislation. Okay, you can read the rest of this, but you get the idea here. Okay, so a lot of times when people in a lot of these reparations reactionaries, when they talk about reparations, they don't talk about this. This is why this study is so important. Okay, you have to have a critical analysis of understanding the history of what happened to African Americans, not assuming that you know what happened, because most people don't know. Most Americans are ignorant of history, including African Americans. Okay, and this, and this is why I said you have to first assess the damage that was done before you start trying to lay out the remedies. Okay, assessing the damage that was done that needs repairing. Before you can make recommendations for reparations, you first have to properly assess the damage that was done. And to repair, the root concept of reparations means to repair, to make you whole again. And you also have to analyze who African people were and what African people had before we were put into an institution of slavery that largely stripped us of our history, culture, language, spiritual systems, folklore, mores, family ties, family names, cultural identity, etc. Okay, if you start your analysis with us already in slavery, one, you're going to miss thousands of years of history. Two, you're not going to fully understand the damage that was inflicted upon us. Three, you also have to understand the history and the laws and policies put in place after slavery ended as well that brought us to where we are today. One of the things I've been saying is that because the last of the former slaves died in the 1950s, number one. Number two, because race-based policies are illegal at the federal level, okay, and I talked about this in the actual presentation at King Solomon Baptist Church. That's based upon Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, non-discrimination in federally assisted programs, non-discrimination in federally assisted programs, Section 601. No person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Okay. Now, so what this means is that race-based policies at the federal level are illegal. You cannot have policies for one race of people. All right. Now, some people may say, well, Japanese Americans got reparations from the federal government. Okay. Let's look and see what happened. And the most important thing to ask is which Japanese Americans got reparations from the federal government. So how many people have seen this before? I've talked about this before. This is at justice.gov. Justice.gov is the official website of the U.S. Department of Justice. U.S. Department of Justice was created by an act of Congress in 1870, largely to enforce the new rights given to African Americans. Okay, I teach this in my class, Black Resistance Movements. Okay, so this is at justice.gov. This is from February 19th, 1999, announcing the closing of this 10-year program. So you can Google this 10-year program to compensate Japanese Americans interned during World War II closes its doors. All right. Now, it was $1.6 billion appropriated by Congress. Congress passed a law acknowledging the wrongs inflicted upon Japanese Americans when they were put into internment camps during World War II. Okay. It was President Franklin Roosevelt who ordered them to be rounded up and put into internment camps. All right. So Congress allocated $1.6 billion, but it went to approximately 82,250 people of Japanese ancestry. It did not go to all Japanese Americans. It went to only those who were interned during World War II, only those during World War II who were put into internment camps or who had to flee, who had to evacuate. It did not go to all Japanese Americans who were alive between 1988 and 1998. Okay, so when why didn't it go to all Japanese Americans? Because race-based policies are illegal in the United States based upon Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Section 601, non-discrimination in fairly assisted programs, like I was explaining to you. This is why you have to understand law. Okay. This is why you have to understand law. And a lot of these reparations reactionaries out here talking, most of them don't understand law, especially federal law, because I'm listening to them. I can tell they don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you're seeking a legal remedy to a historical problem, doesn't that imply that you need to understand both history and law? If you're seeking a legal remedy to a historical problem, doesn't that imply that you need to both understand both history and law? Okay. In the state of California, as I stated in my presentation at King Solomon Baptist Church, race-based policies in the state of California are illegal as well, which is why the California Reparations Task Force voted 5-4 to make any benefits that are given out based upon lineage as opposed to based upon race, because they know they're going to be sued, and they're trying to make sure whatever gets passed does not get overturned in court for violating California state law. Okay, so that's why they can't do it for based upon race and do it for all African Americans, things like that. No. All right, now okay. And it talks about this right here. Let's see, where is it? It gives the stipulations. Okay. In the case of monetary reparations, only the individuals who can demonstrate that they are the descendant of either an enslaved African American in the U.S. or a free African American living in the U.S. prior to 1900 should be eligible, the report says. That's for the state of California. Okay. So those are the stipulations they had to put on it to base it based upon lineage, because race-based policies are illegal in the state of California. All right, now, let me go to my next point here quickly because I'm running out of time. Also, I saw this article from National Public Radio. Okay, show you. I said 2/3 of Americans are against reparations. Now, most Californians are against reparations also. Now, it's something important for people to understand. African Americans are 6% of the population in California and 6% of the population in San Francisco as well. Okay. Most California voters oppose cash reparations for slavery poll fines. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Now, this is from September 11th, 2023. Okay. So you can read this. A majority of California voters oppose making cash payments as a form of compensation to residents of the state who are descendants of enslaved African Americans, according to a new poll from the University of California, Berkeley. But once again, California does not have a real history of slavery, like Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, things like that. At best, they had about 1,500 people in the semi-slavery status in 1850 when California became a state in the Union. Some estimates show up to 4,000, but that's from 1850 to 1865. Okay, in June of 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger goes into Galveston, Texas to deliver General Order Number 3, and what we commemorate June 19th, 1865, there were 250,000 enslaved Africans in Texas. California is not Texas, but California does have a rampant history of racism, housing segregation, segregation when it comes to education, racial terror, voter suppression, things like this. There are other harms. That's why it was so important for this study to lay out the harms, those 12 harms. Is more than just slavery. It's more than just our ancestors didn't get paid. If you think the harm from slavery was our ancestors didn't get paid, then you haven't studied the history of slavery, and you haven't studied the history that came after slavery, 155, 156 years after slavery ended, when Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment, December 6, 1865, which legally ended chattel slavery in this country. The findings suggest a tough political road ahead for the effort to make California the first state in the nation to adopt a cash reparations program to atone for slavery's legacy. The poll of more than 6,000 registered voters found that only 23% supported cash reparations compared to 59% who said they opposed them, and 13% who had no opinion. So the 59% who opposed them, that's almost 2/3. okay, which would be right at about 67%, 67%. That's almost right at 2/3. While a majority of California voters believe that Black Americans continue to be affected by the legacy of slavery, our poll is showing that there is no real support for cash reparations to deal with the situation, said Mark DiCamillo, director of the Berkeley IGS poll. Okay, read the rest of this article here. Most California voters oppose cash reparations for slavery, poll finds from September 11th, 2023 by Adrian Florido for NPR.org, National Public Radio. All right, now, okay. I talked about the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Go to archives.gov and you can read it. Archives.gov is the U.S. National Archives. And this right here, U.S. National Archives, 1964 Civil Rights Act. Scroll down, gives you some history of it. And then if you just search for, do Control F, search for Section 601. That's Title 1, yep. Section 601. Right here, Title 6, Section 601, Non-Discrimination and Fair Assisted Program. This is what I was talking about. This is why race-based policies are illegal in the United States and at the federal level. And many states also have laws that ban race-based policies as well. Okay, now, bringing back. Okay, read this article here because I don't have time to get into it. One of the policy recommendations, and so we have to have comprehensive reparations. Comprehensive repairing of the damage. It's not going to be one policy. It's going to be multiple policies. That's why they laid out 115 policy recommendations. Okay. That's why I laid out 115 policy recommendations. Okay. Now George Middleton said no person who identifies as white should have any role in the process of implementing reparations policies. The white, I don't know what planet you live on, but there are 435 members of the House of Representatives. Only about 12 or 13% are African American. There are 100 members of the U.S. Senate. Only 4 are African Americans, and Senator Tim Scott already said he's not voting for reparations. Anything that passes the House or the Senate has to be signed into law by president, unless it overrides a veto by a president, and then you need 2/3 majority of both the House and the Senate. When it goes to state legislatures, the state legislature has to vote on that. Most of the state legislatures, the majority of the people in state legislatures are white, because 57% of the country is white, and African Americans make up 13.5% of the country. So I don't know how you gonna finagle something like that, George Middleton, but when you do, contact me and let me know. Okay, let's back on planet Earth in 2024. Let's continue. This right here. A lot of people don't really understand the devastating impact that climate change has on African American communities, non-white communities, but especially African American communities. Bringing back trees to 4 cities, redlined areas, helps residents and the climate. June 23rd, 2021. So in my presentation, I talked about how African American communities have more pavement and have less trees in them. That's as a result of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts of 1952 and 1956 that drove 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highways across the country and wiped out thousands of homes that we own, wiped out thousands of businesses, all right, and ran the expressways through. There's a good study by NBC.com called Bulldozed and Bisected that documents this history. Now, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that was passed in 2021, and only 19 Republicans in the U.S. Senate and only 14 Republicans in the House of Representatives voted for the bill. That bill is going to start repairing some of that damage that was done because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts. Okay. And let me turn this. Okay. Bulldozed and bisected, highway construction built a legacy of inequality. Okay. So check this out for NBCnews.com. And it talks about right here. What has changed decades after the Federal Highway Act of 1956 brought 41,000 miles of interstates to the country is the recognition of the harm that was done to the communities left in the shade of these now aging roadways. From 1957 to 1977, the program displaced over 475,000 households and 1 million people, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Okay. Now, as many of these hulking structures reach obsolescence, the federal government and many states and cities are belatedly recognizing the harm they caused and are working with communities to design alternatives that repair the damage. But in many cases, those plans are reopening old wounds and leading to protracted debates that politicians and engineers are struggling to solve. Okay, so Reed, this is an in-depth analysis here that looked at different cities across the country. Okay, but check this out. It's called Bulldozed and Bisected. Highway construction built a legacy of inequality. This is from NBCnews.com, June 18th, 2021. All right, now let's go back to this piece here quickly. This deals with the impact that trees have on communities, and what they do is they lower the temperature in the community. Okay, as the globe heats up, cities across America are taking a fresh look at their trees. They keep urban neighborhoods cooler, make air conditioning bills manageable, and most importantly, protect lives during heat waves. They help capture stormwater runoff, and as trees grow, they remove heat trapping carbon dioxide from the air. So they help to purify the air. Okay, 1, 2, they lower the temperatures in the communities. They help with the cost of energy bills, the cost of running air conditioners, because in our communities, they tend to be about 4 to 5 degrees hotter or something like that, maybe a little more. This increases heat-related illnesses, heat-related deaths, etc. So there's multiple things that are addressed and improved when you have more trees in communities. Okay. These efforts are also aimed at attacking long-standing economic and racial inequality. Researchers have found that low-income neighborhoods generally have fewer trees than wealthier ones. In Cleveland, a coalition of city agencies, nonprofit organizations, and corporations has endorsed an ambitious plan to expand tree cover from its current level of 19% to 30% by 2040, the year 2040. That will require planting 24,000 trees each year for the next 10 years, along with better maintenance of existing trees. Okay, so read the rest of this. You get the idea of what I'm talking about. This goes in depth and talks about how this is a problem, especially for the African-American community. Okay, the name of this article: Bringing Back Trees to Forest Cities, Redlined Areas Help Residents and the Climate. All right, now, let me see. Let me go back to my notes here. I'm gonna make sure I got all this. Okay, now we're going into presidential election, 2024 presidential election. And I do admit I follow politics every day. That's why I talk about it on the African History Network show. You see some of the articles that I post. That's why I can talk on different shows. I can speak on different shows. That's why I'm a panelist on Roland Martin Unfiltered for the past 3 years, going back to October 2020. I'm on every Friday. That's how I can speak on all these subjects, because I study politics. I'm hearing some people say, I'm hearing ridiculous talk about third-party candidates for president. No third-party candidate has won a single electoral college vote since 1968. Okay, since 1968, when Governor George Wallace of Alabama won 46 electoral college votes in the 1968 presidential election between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey. Okay, Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey. Okay, read this article here. I don't have time to get deep into this, but read this article here from slate.com. If you don't understand how the electoral college works, you have to understand how the electoral college works, first of all. Okay, a romp through history's most successful third-party presidential candidates. This article is from July 3rd, 2023. July 3rd, 2023. And for the sake of time, if we go here and look at George Wallace, right here, 1968, George Wallace. He was the last third-party candidate to win a single electoral college vote. He won 46 electoral college votes, and he won 5 southern states, 5 former Confederate states. Okay. He won, let me see, Wallace, what happened? He won 46 electoral, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Okay. All right. So it takes 270 electoral college votes to become president-elect. You win the electoral college votes to become president-elect, not because the electoral college votes, because the electoral college does not vote until the first Monday following the second Wednesday in December. Okay, you win the electoral college votes associated with a state by winning the popular vote in the state. The popular vote does matter. Anybody that says the popular vote doesn't matter is lying to you. They haven't read the U.S. Constitution. They haven't read the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, 12th Amendment of 1804, which dealt with the electoral college and changed how the presidential election, how the winner was determined. It's not the national popular vote that matters. It's the popular vote per state that matters. Okay? That's how you become president-elect. That's how you get 270. Well, what happens if no candidate gets the required 270 electoral college votes? Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let's go to archives.gov and let's see what archives.gov says about this. Okay. And what you can do is just Google what happens if no, I'm going to show you how I got this. Okay. Let's look at this here. If we just go to Google this. All right, I'm going to show you this here. So we just go to Google, right? And if we just Google what happens if no president gets 270 electoral college votes, okay? Okay, or if no presidential candidate gets that, hit enter. All right, go right here, National Archives. You see this? National Archives. That's archives.gov. That's the U.S. National Archives. Okay, click right there. Frequently asked questions. Electoral College. Frequently asked questions. We want, what happens if no presidential candidate gets 270 electoral votes? Okay. If no candidate receives a majority of electoral votes, the presidential election leaves the electoral college process and moves to Congress. Pay attention, because 99% of Americans don't know this. Most Americans don't understand the U.S. Constitution, as I talked about in my speech, in my Kwanzaa presentation at King Solomon Baptist Church here in Detroit. The House of Representatives elects the president from the 3 presidential candidates who receive the most electoral college votes. Okay? So if you have a third party candidate and people fall for this third party trick because they don't understand how the electoral college works, and neither top 2 candidates gets the needed 270 electoral college votes, then it goes to the House of Representatives, where Republicans have control of the House of Representatives. Nobody saw this one coming. Each state delegation, see, they vote based upon delegation. Each state delegation has 1 vote, and it is up to the individual states to determine how to vote. Republicans control 26 of the 50 state delegations. A candidate must receive at least 26 votes, which is the majority of the state delegations, to be elected. What that means is that if Donald Trump does not, if he loses the popular vote again, and if he loses the electoral college vote again, then if neither Trump or Biden get the needed 270 electoral college votes, then it goes to the House of Representatives to decide based upon delegation. And because Republicans are in control of the House and control 26 of those delegations, they can vote for Trump and he can become president again with the help of a third party candidate and people who are ignorant of how the Constitution works and how the Electoral College works. And it was the U.S. Constitution that created the Electoral College at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. The Senate elects the vice president from the 2 vice presidential candidates with the most electoral votes. Each senator casts 1 vote for vice president. Since the District of Columbia has no senators and is not represented in the vote, the candidate must receive at least 51 votes and majority of senators to be elected. So the House would choose, the House of Representatives would choose the president if neither presidential candidate, if no presidential candidate gets 270 electoral college votes. The House of Representatives would choose the president based upon delegation, okay, based upon state delegation. And then the U.S. Senate would vote for the vice president based upon the 2 vice presidential candidates with the most electoral college votes. This is why understanding the U.S. Constitution is so important, because it comes from this. But as I stated, and as the article from CBSnews.com, January 19th, 2021, the day before the January 20th inauguration, as it clearly states, most Americans are ignorant of the Constitution. And it's let's see, where's that article? Right here. Most Americans don't know what's in the Constitution, a crisis of civic educationcbsnews.com, January 19th, 2021. Read that article and watch the video that they have in there as well. And you'll be shocked how little people know about the U.S. Constitution. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Let me see. Do I have any more? I think that's it. Okay. So now some people may ask the question, and I get this question. So if you see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered, you hear me talk about this document right here. This is at whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov is the official website of the White House. They have a ton of good information there. This one here, this deals with how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping the African-American community. I don't know where people are getting all this misinformation from. When I ask them how they go research this, how they go verify this, anything, they can't tell me. This one right here, who's read this document? We've dealt with this a number of times here on the show. It was last updated February 27, 2023. Fact sheet, the Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. It's a 36-page document that goes through and it deals with different policies from the Biden-Harris administration, $1.9 trillion America Rescue Plan, Inflation Reduction Act, that no Republicans voted for either one of those bills in the House or the Senate, lowering energy costs and creating economic opportunities through the Inflation Reduction Act. It talks about the American Rescue Plan, how it opened up the economy. You had stimulus checks. You had money that went to HBCUs. HBCUs has gotten $7 billion from the Biden-Harris administration. They got about $5.8 billion in 2021, which is a record amount of funding in a single year from any administration. Making home efficiency upgrades more affordable, creating economic opportunities and good paying jobs. You have 14 million jobs created, 4.5 million net jobs created, 3.7% unemployment rate. In 2023, I think it was right around May 2023, lowest unemployment rate for African Americans since 1972, since they started keeping track of the unemployment rate by race. Providing relief to farmers, making critical investments in Black families and communities in the American Rescue Plan, historic expansion of the child tax credit, cutting child poverty to record lows for Black children. And so we know that the child tax credit expired, but you can get that back. But you need to expand the margin that Democrats have in the Senate. Because if you get 55 Democrats in the Senate, then you can do an exception to the filibuster, and you can get, or you can do away with the filibuster rule, or do a carve out, and you can get more policies passed. You can get the child tax credit passed again. Supporting child care providers and reducing child care costs for Black families. You had all this in the American Rescue Plan. So look at that, and then it goes through and looks at different policies. You had the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, first anti-lynching bill in 122 years. You had 150 federal judges that were confirmed under President Joe Biden, ensuring Black homeowners get full value for their homes. So go through and look at this. Okay, it's 36 pages. It breaks down policy by policy. People forget Executive Order 13985 on the first day that Biden and Harris were in office. Executive Order 13985 dealt with racial inequity in the federal government. And then it was in later that year, around October, something like that, where they released the findings and implemented. It was 300 policies across 90 federal government agencies that they implemented to address racial inequity. There was an article from thegrio.com that dealt with this. Let me see something if I can find this quickly here. Okay, this one right here, April 14th, 2022, right around that time. I think this is the article here from thegrio.com. So there were 10 executive orders that were signed on Biden's first day in office, January 20th, 2021. I know there were commercials that were running a few months ago that talked about accomplishments in the Biden-Harris administration, how they were helping the African-American community. They mentioned this executive order, but they didn't mention it by name. It's Executive Order 13985. Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equity. The Griot spoke with agency leaders on ways their departments plan to fulfill Biden's executive order to ensure government services are distributed equitably. Keith Gaynor wrote this article April 14th, 2022. Okay, so read this. Biden-Harris administration unveiled on Thursday a massive government-wide action plan to advance racial equity across 90 federal agencies, with more than 300 strategies and commitments laid out by government leaders. The announcements from the dozens of federal agencies are the start of fulfilling an executive order signed by President Joe Biden on his first day in office to advance racial equity across the entire federal government. Okay, so read this article here from thegrio.com. Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equity. All right, now, now at the same time, I don't hear enough people talking about what Trump is talking about doing if he gets a second term in office. So you can Google Project 2025. Okay, Google Project 2025. You can read this article here from the New York Times from December 26, 2023. How Trump plans to wield power in 2025. What we know. Donald Trump and his allies are already laying the groundwork for a possible second Trump presidency, forging plans for an even more extreme agenda than his first term. And they talk about didn't hear they talk about Project 2025. It was another article, but you could read this one here. This talks about getting revenge. This talks about, I think they mentioned the Insurrection Act. Yeah. Trump wants to use U.S. troops on domestic soil, instituting the Insurrection Act of 1871. So read this one here. Trump and his allies want greater control over the federal bureaucracy, fewer checks and balances to restrain him. Okay, so we have that one. Then look at this piece here from CNN.com. Trump's radical second term agenda would wield executive power in unprecedented ways. Now, this is largely based upon things he's saying in public. Okay, Thursday, November 16, 2023, CNN.com. A massive operation to detain and deport undocumented immigrants, a purge of the federal workforce of anyone deemed disloyal. Because with Schedule F employees, he wants to get rid of thousands of federal employees that are not loyal to him. Federal employees take an oath to the U.S. Constitution. They don't take an oath to a president. Wielding the power of the federal law enforcement against political enemies. So read this one also. Okay, and it talks about Project 2025. a transition project run by the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has brought many of these groups together to quote, pave the way for an effective conservative administration, end quote. Well, the Heritage Foundation put out a book when Ronald Reagan came into office, right around 81. And in that book, they laid out 2,000 policies they wanted the Reagan administration to adopt. The Reagan administration adopted 60% of those policies. That's the Heritage Foundation. Okay. Do you know who Jessica Anderson is? Jessica Anderson is the executive director of Heritage Action for America. Heritage Action for America is the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation is a right-wing think tank created in about 1973 by Paul Weyrich. Okay. Conservative Paul Weyrich. Paul Weyrich also co-founded ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. Okay, now in this article from MotherJones.com by Ari Berman and Nick Sergey from May 13th, 2021, they exposed Jessica Anderson, who was bragging about crafting Senate Bill 201 in Georgia that Governor Brian Kemp signed into law. What was Senate Bill 201? Senate Bill 201 was the voter suppression law in Georgia that became a boilerplate law that's been adopted by numerous states, but largely a lot of the southern states, to suppress votes based upon the big lie, based upon the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. Well, this is Jessica Anderson explaining how Heritage Action for America, the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation, orchestrated this. Okay. In a private meeting last month with big money donors, the head of a top conservative group boasted that her outfit had crafted the new voter suppression law in Georgia and was doing the same with similar bills for Republican state legislators across the country. Quote, in some cases, we actually draft them for them, end quote, she said, or we have a sentinel on our behalf give them the model legislation so it has that grassroots from the bottom up type of vibe, end quote. The Georgia law had, quote, 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended, end quote, the Heritage Foundation. 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended. Jessica Anderson, the executive director of Heritage Action for America, a sister organization of the Heritage Foundation, told the foundation's donors at an April 22nd gathering in Tucson, Arizona, in a recording obtained by the watchdog group, documented and shared with Mother Jones. Those included policies severely restricting mail ballot drop boxes, preventing election officials from sending absentee ballot request forms to voters, making it easier for partisan workers to monitor the polls, preventing the collection of mail ballots, and restricting the ability of counties to accept donations from nonprofit groups seeking to aid in election administration. Okay, read the rest of this here. This is dealing with the Heritage Foundation. Okay, now you have the Heritage Foundation. Who got 60% of the policies they wanted implemented by the Ronald Reagan administration. Now you have them with Project 2025, and they're preparing for a second Trump administration. Back to this article from CNN.com. Project 2025, a transition project run by the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has brought many of these groups together to, quote, pave the way for an effective conservative administration, end quote. The efforts by outside groups to map out the legal and policy specifics of a second Trump term were recently met with some pushback from Trump's official campaign apparatus. Quote, the efforts by various nonprofit groups are certainly appreciated and can be enormously helpful. However, none of these groups or individuals speak for President Trump or his campaign. Well, he's not president anymore. I don't know why they keep calling him President Trump. Campaign advisors Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita wrote in a statement. Still, the broad contours of Trump's agenda have been laid out by the former president himself on the campaign trail, as well as in a series of videos and releases put out by the Trump campaign. Read the rest of this. Trump's radical second-term agenda would wield executive power in unprecedented ways. This is from Thursday, November 16, 2023, CNN.com. You can look at this one here from the Washington Post. Trump and allies plot revenge. Justice Department control in a second term. Trump and allies plot revenge. Justice Department control in a second term. Advisors have also discussed deploying the military to quell potential unrest on Inauguration Day. Critics have called the ideas under consideration dangerous and unconstitutional. But when has Donald Trump cared about the Constitution? I mean, he tried to overthrow the government January 6, 2021. This article is from November 5th, 2023. Okay, so read this also. And it mentions potentially invoking the Insurrection Act. Okay, on his first day in office to allow him to deploy the military against civil demonstrations. All right. So look, hopefully that added more context to what I was talking about in the very short presentation that I did December 27, 2023, King Solomon Baptist Church for the Kwanzaa celebration. You can visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. If you like this type of information, visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. We have the bundle pack still going on of my 2 online courses. We have our Kwanzaa bundle pack still going on until January 7th. You get my 2 online history courses that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, and Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement, 1800 1968. You get that and 15 of my lectures in digital download format, all for $100. That's 76% off. That's about a $400 value, close to a $400 value. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's right on the homepage. And our next class will be Sunday, January 7th, of Black Resistance Movements, 1800 to 1968. Okay, you can register for these classes individually. Register for the courses. They're on sale $60 each, regularly $130, but the bundle pack is a better deal. You can support the African History Network also, $ the AHN Show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, $ the AHN Show. So when you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. These other ones here are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. I'm still trying to get them shut down. And if you click right here, because they've been stealing money from us, you click right there on our link. It shows our QR code also. Okay. All right. Okay. So hopefully you learned a lot today. Be sure to follow us here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace. Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep from the African History Network. Our Kwanzaa online history course bundle pack is on sale right now. We have a fantastic promotion for you. Get our bundle pack of 2 online history courses that I teach, as well as my 15 lecture downloadable bundle, African History Awakens the African Mind from Mental Death. These are both from me, Michael Imhotep. They're on sale right now for only $100. That's 76% off. My first online history class is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Kemet is one of the original names for Egypt. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles. There's about 100 articles that we cover in the class, over 200 slides that I put together as well. And there are also video clips, including excerpts of interviews I've done with some of our historians and scholars, as well as Runoko Rashidi, Professor James Small, Anthony Browder, Professor Kabahaya Wafa Kamene, and Dr. David Imhotep. In the second class that I teach, it's called Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, the U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. And we dig in deep and look at history chronologically from 1800 to 1968 and look at what leads to the Civil War taking place. We study the Jim Crow era, the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, and the Great Migration, 1915 and 1970, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us where we are today, to understand where we need to go from here. I created both of these classes, created the curriculum, chose the content as well. This sale ends Sunday, January 7th, 2024. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You'll see the promotion at the top of the page. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content. You can join us for our next online class live Sunday, January 7th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch all of these classes on demand, and even after the course is over with, you don't lose access. Register right now, order right now. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This sale ends Sunday, January 7th, 2024. Also, if you'd like to stop for information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever.